Hey everyone, and welcome back to Microtech Knives. Today we're going to talk about what, Jason?
I don't know what you got in your box there.
Let's talk about Counterfeit Microtechs. Now, Jason, unfortunately, all of these people thought they had purchased an authentic Microtech knife.
Yeah.
How did we come across these?
Okay, basically what these are, Ray, is these are knives that are obviously counterfeits, but they've been returned to our warranty and service program. And, you know, the sad part about it is when people see this logo or some of our branding.
Yeah, and these are actually good copies. I mean, they've stolen
Some of
our
them
logos.
Some of them are.
Yeah, and then some of them, this is going to be one of those caveat emptor. We've never made a knife like this. Matter of fact, the only one that we've ever had to have this mechanism like this would be like the Dirac,
Yes.
or some of the olders from way back when, but we've never had anything that looked like this.
That actually looks like one of our competitors' knives.
Correct, it does. This kind of looks like an infidel, doesn't it?
Kind of.
But this has the Microtech branded logo. Guys, these companies go so far as to even put in warranty cards with our address on there, and people fill them out thinking they're getting warranty information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. An authentic Microtech.
So what we're going to do on this episode is we're going to talk about some things you can look for. We'll show some close-ups of some of the counterfeits and how it really hurts the industry. You know, it's not just us. It's from your premium brands like your Rolexes, even Benchmade, your other knife manufacturers.
Oakley, Ray-Ban.
Yeah, Louis Vuitton, Gucci. And this is a huge problem. Guys, you will never find one of our knives on like Alibaba or DHgate or anything like that. If you're supporting that, you're helping support that counterfeit industry, and we do not suggest you do that because you're not getting what you're thinking you're getting, or you're just getting something that's going to look like or somewhat represent something of ours, and we'll show you some of the differences in quality.
You know, Ray, I actually prefer the real McCoy,
It,
but I am the real McCoy.
The real McCoy. All right, so stay tuned and we'll do some close-ups of these. Here's a sampling of some of the knives that have been sent in for repair whose owners really thought they had purchased a true Microtech. Everything from Macoras to LUDTs to Halos, and then of course these right here, which, Jason, what are these? I mean, we don't even make a knife like
Hey
this.
guys, one of the most common knives that we see in the counterfeit industry is the Combat Troton. As you can see here, this is about the closest one I picked up out of the pile that kind of resembles the same shape as a Combat Troton that we actually make. As you can see, the finish though is absolutely ridiculous on the counterfeit. You also see one of the telltale signs, the shiny pieces of hardware. Okay, nothing we do actually looks like that. And if you actually take a close look at that button there, that's actually made out of pot metal. We actually machine all of our hardware and everything in-house, and sometimes, you know, it's hard to tell as far as outward appearance that you're actually buying a counterfeit until you get to the internals. Like, you know, you've seen in previous videos that we've done on Bertha and Ultratech, we do everything in-house. We machine all of our internal parts. All of these normally made out of pot metal, and you actually get what you pay for. Blade profile, let's take a look at that. Combat Troton DE versus counterfeit, okay? You see there's a big blade to handle ratio difference there in the original and the counterfeit. Also the flats, everything is just looks off. Another telltale sign of a counterfeit, you see that serial number right there, 556. Stay away, guys. We do not make any knife with a serial number 556. Hardware. Take a look at that right there. That is what our tri-wing screws look like. You can see on this AUDT here, there's a big difference in that tri-wing.
Okay, so one thing that the counterfeiters have been able to do is do really good representations of our knives. And we don't fault you guys. You don't know what you don't know. So unless you have an authentic one to compare it with, it can be difficult upon first inspection. So what we're going to do is point out some things. You have to tell me which one is the real one. Of course, those of you that know, this is going to be the real one. Now you might say, well, how did you know that? One of the things you need to look at is external appearance, especially on laser markings. This laser marking here on this counterfeit, you can actually feel a deep burned engraving. This one is smooth. You will not be able to feel it on the real one at the bottom. Looking at the pivot screws, you'll also notice that this one has a very shiny pivot screw there. Let's look closer at the finish. You guys see that rough texture? Look at the corners. Now let's look at the real one. On this one here, you're going to see, now this one's been carried for quite a while, but do you see how the anodizing is much smoother on it? You might say, well, that hardware actually has a ring on it. Well, this had ringed hardware for this specific one. Most LUDTs are not like that, but look at the transition on the cut going from the flat over to the sides. Now is when it's going to become pretty apparent as we look at the real one, the authentic one here. Now remember, this one does have special ringed hardware, but when we look at the fake one, you can see the difference in the quality of those screws and the finish. Another thing I want to point out is pay attention to the detail in this area right here where the pivot goes in. Do you see how it looks like they just came in straight and cut that out? Whereas on an authentic one, I'm going to hold them side by side. An authentic one, you see we are actually going to chamfer all of those edges. You see that on the edge right there where it transitions from the aluminum to the pivot? See that bevel? No bevel. Look at the finish of the buttons, the screws. Let me try to focus this in a little better. So on that tri-wing screw, that's a pretty good representation of what we're doing, so it's hard to tell, but look at the chassis finish. Now let's look at the blade. If you look at these two, which one's the real one? If you look at the top one, you'll see it's marked LMAX. I can pretty much guarantee you that is not an LMAX blade on the top or blade steel. But the biggest thing is, once again, that laser marking. That laser marking, you can feel it. It's really, really rough in texture, but they've done a good job of copying. Now, this one actually might look like it's fake because some of the markings are a little lighter, but that's not really what you're looking for. What you're looking for is feeling it. You should not feel like a deep cut like I can in this one. If I take a pen and run it across here, see how it's stopping my pen when it's hitting those high spots? On the authentic one, nothing. I can feel a little texture, but that's about it. You'll also notice there is no blood groove on the fake one, but they've gotten good at copying that as well. Let's look at the jimping on the back. You can see how the one at the top is kind of off center, wasn't just quite right. They didn't pay attention to the detail, whereas the one on the bottom is the authentic one. Huge differences if you know what you're looking for.
Okay guys, let's take a look at the Combat Troton. This is one of my absolute favorite personal carries of mine. As you can see, this is about the closest counterfeit that we came to, you know, that even looks similar to our chassis. If you'll take a look though, you'll see some huge differences. As Ray was talking about the LUDT, this one, the finish on it is horrible compared to the smooth finish, the anodized finish that is on the original. Also, if you take a look at our hardware, we make and tumble and process all of our hardware in-house, like you've seen in the Birth of an Ultratech videos. Normally what you get internally and externally on a lot of the hardware on the counterfeits is a pot metal piece, and that is not going to be good for you over time. You can see the finish work on this one is actually terrible too. Take a look at the hardware. We did actually do Torx in the past, as well as a tri-hole screw, but these definitely are not original. Another thing you want to take a look at as far as external appearance, look at the serrations. Our serrations are always super crisp, super deep. They actually look fantastic. This, garbage. Alright, one telltale sign I want to give away to y'all here is serial numbers. Okay, this 556 that you see here, that is a telltale sign of a counterfeit. You also have serial number 885 and 06042 on halos that are telltale signs that you're purchasing a counterfeit. So you want to be careful with those as well.
You can't always tell by the serial number, and looking at these halo folks, what I want you to pay attention to is the actual font on the serial number ranges themselves. So this is pretty similar to what we use. This, we don't use any numbers that look like that as far as the font. Let me zoom in a little more. so you guys can see how those numbers are. I'm not going to give away everything that we look for, because if we share that, then the counterfeiters can use that against us, because then they can make a better representation. But there are certain things that we look for in the charging handle area that are pretty telltale. As Jason mentioned on looking at the hardware, what I want you guys to pay particular attention to are the buttons on these halos. Now remember, these are all fake. So if you guys look at this one right here, you see how really shiny it is? We're typically not going to see that. Even though the machining is really good, we have more of a tumbled finish that's going to look similar to this or this one. This is actually a very good representation of what our button looks like. But if you look at how shiny these screws right here are on the top of the tri-wing, they're horrible. And let's look at this one a little closer. So looking at this, I mean, the screw is not even finished out. It was like it was broken and shipped that way. You'll see another one right here. These are not what our tri-wings look like. Our tri-wings are going to have more of a concavity right here instead of being more like a triangle like this one is. Now guys, here's an X85. Once again, look at the hardware. If you'll look at these screws here, they're not the way they should be. These are depressed, they're not as tall as they should be. You'll also notice that the screw is almost flush with the top of the chassis, whereas ours is a little more recessed. But they do a good job with the laser engraving. But the backside on the glass break here, we don't make one that shiny. They're always going to be tumbled, and you're never going to see a shiny pocket clip like this that looks almost chrome. They've actually done a decent job with the laser marking, but the laser marking is still too deep. If we look at the button, you'll notice that it's a good copy of our X button, but right here, this area right here is not depressed, it's flat. Looking at the blade, no markings. Now occasionally we will do sterile blades, but this is a pretty good counterfeit here. But they do have the blood groove in there, so if you don't know, or if you think you're getting a good deal, more than likely, if it's too good to be true, it is. All right, let's take a look at two used knives. One is a UTX-85 clone, one is a real one. Can you guys tell which one is real and which is fake? It is very tough upon first inspection, but once again, look for that shiny hardware. So I'm telling you guys, this is the fake. If you look at the screws aren't bad here, but they're not like our really screws. Once again, look for that chamfered edge. See how ours are recessed? These are kind of flush. Now let's take a closer look at these buttons. We do realize one is black and one is tumbled hardware, but what you want to see on this button, you look at the X button here. If you look right here, that is the fake. This is the real one. Always pay attention to the detail on these lines right in here, because they will not usually be as clean on the clones. The other thing you need to look at is look at the concavity right in here where it slopes down from the peak to the valley. If you look at that, and if we look at this one, it's almost a straight edge all the way down. So once again, this is the clone. The other thing is, unless you have a real one to compare it to, you really can't tell the size of it. So if this were laying on a table, it's going to appear to be smaller than an Ultratech, but a real UTX-85 is going to be this.
Holy crap, did you change clothes?
Of course I did. I didn't know we were going to have to make this into two parts.
Yep.
So guys, this is a lot of information, and we want to share as much information as we can with you about the counterfeits and what to look for. So we're going to break this up into two series. So
Got
stay
something
tuned.
else to look forward to.
That's right. Stay tuned for part 2 coming up next week. We'll see you then. Like, share, and subscribe.